Hey everyone, welcome to another edition of Unravel Your Mind. We're here to transform relationships to love and life. And there's lots of questions that have come in advance. I'm super excited to answer them and to hear any questions that may come in on the live chat. So please be sure to type your question. If I don't get to it today, I promise you I will get to it next week. Every Sunday, 11:11 Pacific time, we're here unraveling the mind. It's so much fun because there's always these thought constructs, situations, people, relationships, great topics that come to the table and we talk about it. So I'm going to jump right in. I've got several questions. The first one is actually quite a long one, and I decided to put it into two different parts because I think that way it will we'll be able to really pick it apart and get into the juice of it. So the question is, my question is, when people from the past come back to your life, even for a brief second, like running into someone after 20 years, does that mean something that I need to learn something or reflect on this point of my life? From your book, I learned everyone teaches me something, and I cannot stop thinking about him since. So I think there's a lot right there. So maybe I'll make this a three-part question. Absolutely. People coming back into your life mean something, but we don't necessarily have to give it a lot of meaning. So what I mean by that is that oftentimes the storylines of our mind want to make a bigger deal out of things than we need to. So I think it's great that you bumped into someone. When people circle back around, sometimes it means that it's just a test to see where you are in your life right now. Sometimes it means that there's something more that person might be helping you to unravel. There might be a lesson that didn't get accomplished or completed prior. So I think that part is great. So it was my ex-boyfriend from 20 years ago. I never thought I'd see him again. He was my first friend and boyfriend in New York City. Without him, I really don't think I would have survived my first year. Okay, so with that extra information, I think that tells us a lot more because now there's real emotional heartstring attached to this person, which is not good or bad. It's just that you have a memory that's very endearing for you, a memory that you wouldn't have survived without this person. So that gives them sort of this place in your heart that it's hard to not have the warm and fuzzy feelings about them. Now, does it mean that you're meant to be together now because you've suddenly bumped into each other? Not necessarily. As I said before, it could be that you're being tested. I think it's most important that you really feel into how you felt when you were with them in that moment. Because again, the mind wants to play all these tapes, wants to play the memories, wants to play the past, wants to project something into the future. What does it mean? What could it be? And so it's always about in that moment. And this might be difficult to do now, but how did you feel? Reflect back. How did I feel in my body in that moment when I was with that person? Probably your mind was like, thinking, oh my gosh, why is this person here? How did I meet them? But there was also a feeling in your body. And the more we get into our bodies, the better we can identify with what our body's telling us. And I promise you, the body doesn't lie. The mind, it gets pretty crazy in there, but the body doesn't lie. So how did you feel when you were with him? And it might be, again, that you needed to just have that familiar feeling. Maybe, I don't know, maybe you're feeling alone right now. Maybe you're feeling like you really could use a confidant and a friend. And maybe he's here just to remind you that you can have that connection with people and that more people can come into your life. Maybe he's supposed to be that person for you again now. I don't know. Only you know deep inside. So part 2 to the question is reflecting on this. I wanted to tell him so many things, but we parted without exchanging our contact information. Reading your book, you were identifying your learning from your experiences. How do I find the meaning of reconnecting or re-separating. I like that. Do you have a method or technique to find out? Well, first of all, I love that you have the awareness that this might just be about re-separating. It might not be the emphasis on the reconnecting. Because again, that's a bit of a fantasy, isn't it? We want to project back into our old memories. It's like, when we hear a song and it takes us back to high school, or, our first kiss, or our first romance. It's like it brings those warm and fuzzy feelings. And maybe it's just simply to bring those warm and fuzzy feelings, to ignite you, to open you up, and to have you attract someone else into your life. Now, the fact that you didn't exchange contact information, and I don't want to read too much into it, but that right there says to me, trust. Just trust that if you were supposed to exchange contact information, spirit would have flowed through you and you would have said, hey, give me your number, or hey, take my number, let's get together. But for whatever reason, that didn't happen. So it doesn't mean that you're not going to bump into this person again. I know New York City is a big city. I know there's lots of things happening there. But I do believe, if you ever saw that movie, gosh, it was so long ago, Serendipity, I think, or Serendipitous. And it was all about how we have these, these synchronicities with people. And if they're meant to be in our life, they will be. We just need to trust, because it could be that spirit is actually protecting you, that person, maybe they haven't grown at all since you were in the relationship with them. Maybe you've grown exponentially, spiritually, and, in so many ways, learning all the life lessons. And maybe they're still stuck back there. Well, you don't want to go back there because you've done all the work. So spirit could also be protecting you and trying to guide you on just really feeling into the emotion of what it was, having the discernment that you don't necessarily want to jump back into something, and just trust that for whatever reason, you guys did not exchange contact information, and that if you are supposed to get together, something will happen. He'll find you on Facebook. He'll find you on LinkedIn. You'll find him. But don't try too hard. This is like, the trust and the flow. It's the fun part, is to just see what happens, right? Reflect on the feelings you had. Reflect on what that relationship meant to you. Reflect on how far you've come since that relationship. And maybe that is the lesson right there. Maybe that is the reason. But yes, everybody is in your life for a purpose. And sometimes they do revisit, and sometimes we go back into relationship with people. But stay in here, in your heart. Feel in here, not your head. Don't go back to where you were. Hold those memories fondly, but feel in here, how do I feel when I'm with this person? And is there something really to explore? Or was it just a fun memory? I hope that helps. If not, and you're on with me live, please text in the questions, and I would be happy to jump in and describe more. But I think one thing I didn't, do you have a method or technique to find out? Yeah, I think it's about feeling inside. The other method or technique I would say that's really helpful for me in these situations is to quiet my mind in whatever way that may be. It might be sitting at your desk. It might be out in nature. Take your journal and your pencil or your pen and just ask the question, why did so-and-so, whatever the person's name is, come into my life today? And let spirit write. Don't think about it, right? That's the big thing, is don't think about what you think you should be writing. Just let it flow. And if nothing flows, it's okay. Just sit, smell a flower, do something fun, and just let it flow. When you find yourself following the mind and the narrative that your mind wants to play, then I would either, laugh about it, have warm, fond feelings about it, reflect on the lessons about it, but I wouldn't become too obsessed about it, because it might just be a passing phase. So that would be my technique, is just to have the mindfulness around it. You can journal, get messages from your higher self, find out, if there's anything a little bit deeper or maybe higher consciousness that you're supposed to get from the situation. So that's a fun one, though. I love when people from the past come in, even sometimes when they're the scary ones, because there is something in it for you, and it's just a reflection of where you are today, and it gives you, some of those gauges as to how far you've come and what tools you want to pull from your box. So I'll be excited to hear if, maybe next week you can come back on and let us know if anything more has happened. But again, anyone listening to the replay, feel free to put questions in the chat. If I don't get to them today, I always get to them the next week. So you don't have to be on live to be asking a question and getting it answered. So, all right, let's go to the next question. My heart is broken. My wife asked for a divorce and I didn't want it, but agreed. We've been apart for about a year. I would get back together with her in a heartbeat if she wanted to. It's her birthday tomorrow. Should I text her? Well, this one's an interesting one. Again, I think it's so important to just really allow people to leave our lives, even when it doesn't feel good. And I'm a true believer, having experienced heartbreak so many times in my life, big heartbreak and big love, that the bigger the heartbreak, the more light that comes in. So number one, I think you're in a really beautiful place in life, even though it might not feel like it, because heartbreak doesn't always feel good. But it's a place where you can really sit with you and who you are and feel into you. And so I would recommend that when it comes to, should I be texting, that you feel into, does that feel right for me? What's my intention behind it? Am I wishing her a happy birthday because I genuinely want to say happy birthday? Or am I doing it because I'm hoping and expecting that I'm going to get a text in return? And I'm hoping and expecting that maybe this is going to be a turning point. Where you're coming from with the text makes a huge difference. If it's just to say happy birthday because you genuinely want them to have a happy birthday, absolutely text them. But if you're feeling like you're doing it in a way that you need something in return, you're probably just still in that tender spot where not sending the text might be the better thing, because that way you don't have to deal with the ramifications of what the person says or doesn't say or how they say it in return. I'm a big believer in allowing people to leave and also doing the cord removal when they do. Or if you're the one to leave, that you do the cord removal, because hanging people on the line isn't helpful. It doesn't mean that you can't love them. Yes, you can still love them. But if you're not together with them, staying deeply, madly, crazily in love with someone is not healthy for you nor for them, right? Because it's just the mind. It's just the mind projecting your own love onto someone else, thinking someone else is actually providing the love, when in fact, love is always within you. It's always here first. It's just our mind that wants to go and say, oh no, it's her. It's her making me feel this way. So I would just be a little gentle with yourself. I would feel into this. I would really decide from a very grounded place what your intention is in sending the text, and then either send it or don't. And maybe you write it and you don't send it, and you just telepathically send the person love. That's also oftentimes something that can be done, is that we don't have to use our words. We can just use our energy, and we can just send someone love and light, and then we don't have to get sort of trapped in the conversation that might not be what we need right now in our life. Maybe it's about staying focused on, what brings me joy and happiness, and being in connection and contact with someone who doesn't want to be with me may not be in your best interest. So feel into it. You'll survive. I'm with you. I again, the broken hearts are always the tough part, but you will get through. It's always about reconnecting to your own love deep within you, and ultimately your connection to source energy. So that offering is always there for all of us at all times. So hopefully that helps. If not, please give me some insight into the questions, and I'll in the chat, and I will clarify. Okay, so for the next question, my boyfriend gave me a very expensive handbag and shoes. I love it, but I'm having a hard time receiving because I can't give such lavish gifts back. Money is an energy. Okay, we know that, right? And money is a tough one sometimes. I suffered this a lot in my life when I wasn't making a lot of money, and I had a hard time. I remember, actually, this memory's coming forward. Um, Before I got married, I'm divorced now, but before I had gotten married, and this is over 20 years ago, I was back in school and I was not making a lot of money, and I was out to dinner with my, well, I guess boyfriend at the time, but I did end up marrying that individual and then divorcing later. Um, he gave me the menu and said, "Here, pick a bottle of wine." And I was just paralyzed because I felt like, oh, I can't pick a bottle of wine because the one that I think that I know a little bit about is too expensive. I mean, back then, I don't even know. It was probably like $30 or something. So, but I just thought to myself, well, I can't afford to buy a $30 bottle of wine. I can't repay this. And so I don't feel like I can make this request. Like, it's just too hard for me. And I ended up giving the menu back. And what I realized so many years later is that I just had issues with receiving because I had this glitch in my programming that I had to be equal when it came to money. And money has this tendency to have power, and it only has power if we give it power. Look, it gives us some freedom in the third dimensional reality. So I'm not discounting that. It is very helpful for us, but it's always about getting our relationship in the, dare I say, right place. I don't really mean right, but in the balanced place, so that giving and receiving can be the same. Because, I might not have been able to repay that $30 bottle of wine at the next dinner, but that individual was not expecting me to. And they were getting joy offering me the menu because they could afford to buy that $30 bottle of wine. And so I probably, in that case, looking back, realize I might have deprived them of the joy that they felt giving to me because I couldn't receive. How crazy is that? So I would just suggest that if you're feeling like, oh, I can't give this back in return, I don't know, how should I feel about these lavish gifts? Feel into the joy of which the person that gave them to you is feeling, having the ability to do so, that they've made the money, that they have the money, that they can offer you these beautiful gifts. Now, with that said, if you're feeling that there's an energy of manipulation or control or something like that, that might be a different situation. But I wasn't picking that energy up with this question. I was picking up that it really is your thing, and it's your lack of ability to receive fully. So feel into that, see if that resonates. And if it is something that's more theirs and there's an energy that feels more manipulative, then feel deeply into that. And most importantly, trust your own intuition, trust your heart, trust how you feel about it. And I think you're going to get all the answers. And the next time this person goes to give you something, just receive, and receive with love, and receive with gratitude and thankfulness, as opposed to feeling meek or weak, because you think that you can't provide something of that same magnitude back. Chances are they know that already, and they're loving you for who you are and what you bring to the table. And that doesn't have to be about money, because love is the new currency. How rich are you? And so feel into that love, feel into what it is that you're offering, what it is that you're bringing to the relationship. And it doesn't have to be money, and it definitely doesn't have to be an equal exchange of money. It's all energy, and we want to be in the love energy, not in the energy of the mind, trying to play out all these programs that we get programmed with. So hopefully that helps. If not, give me a little note in the chat, or if you're a listener and it's not your question, feel free to ask more if this is something you're also dealing with, and I'm happy to cover it. All right, let's go to the next question. I feel so much guilt when I don't get enough done in a day. How can I overcome this feeling? Especially on the day when I accomplish things, but it just doesn't feel like enough. Well, there's lots of ways we could slice this one. What is enough? Who says what's enough? On one hand, I could speak more from the third dimensional field and say, well, you could also prioritize your day, prioritize your time, set things that you're going to focus on, so that at the end of the day, you can checklist, like, what did I get accomplished, and then take the things that didn't and move it to the next day, right? Seems really logical, probably what Stephen Covey has said for the last, I don't know, 30, 40 years. That's one way to approach it. And it's a good way to approach it in the sense of just prioritizing your time. I sometimes make a checklist after I've done like 5 of the 10 things, just so I can simply check them off. So I get what you're talking about, and sometimes feeling like, I need to get stuff done. But let's talk about how we can release the guilt and how we can look at it differently. So perhaps another way to look at this is to really focus on how much you're feeling about each task you're doing. So it's not about the judgment of what you've gotten done, but how you feel when you're doing it. And I just had this conversation. I had somebody else set me straight on this when I was wavering from this, wanting to judge myself, because that's what the mind is. That's why we're here on this show, to unravel the mind, because the mind wants to come in and have judgment. And whenever you hear judgment, that is not you. That is not who you really are. Who you really are is love at the core. Who you really are is an individual having a human experience. You're a soul having a human experience. You're here to experience life. And it's so important that we actually have the experience, as opposed to the analysis that the brain and the mind want to project onto us, right? So consciousness, mindfulness, this is expanding those things so we can have awareness around how we're feeling when we're doing something, how we're feeling when we're participating in something, and shifting ourselves away from something, not just doing something because we think we have to. I mean, look, sometimes we have to. Sometimes we have to pay taxes. Sometimes we have to go pay rent or pay our mortgage. So there are those have to things. But the more we can shift how we feel about it, I am so grateful that I get to pay my mortgage this month. I'm so grateful because I have a home that has a roof over my head and it's a warm, safe place for me. I am so grateful that I get to pay this mortgage. I am so grateful. So it's being in that energy, as opposed to I didn't make enough money this month to have the fun money I wanted to pay my rent and to do this, right? These are all judgments of the mind. And it comes in all the time. All the time, the mind is there online, ready to critique, ready to cut you down. So you got to get the cheerleader in that seat. So I feel like I might have digressed a little bit, but it's about how I feel so much guilt when I don't get enough done. Well, just stop evaluating how much you got done and be grateful for what you did, and be grateful in the moment of which you're doing it, so that you can really feel the energy and the flow of what life is offering you in every moment. Okay, let's go to the next question. My boyfriend and I have broken up and gotten back together many times. I think he wants to get back together again. Is there a limit to the number of times we should try? Well, you're speaking to someone who's just an advocate for getting all the lessons for every soul contract. I do believe when the soul contract is up, it's time to move on. But the question here, I think, is the soul contract may or may not be over yet. And so I think you should go back as many times as you need to close up that soul contract. But that requires you to do some really deep work. And the deep work is reflecting on, what is it that I'm getting or need to get still from a lesson perspective from this individual? Or what is it that they need to get from me? And if the giving and receiving isn't mutual, and it's that the person's coming back in to take from you, then it's a no. But if it's that the person has shifted themselves and they have something more to offer, maybe they've had a shift, show up and again, feel deep inside, is this where I want to be? Is this pulling me back? Or is this a situation now that is going to help me solidify a lesson that I had in this relationship, or maybe it's something that's going to catapult you forward. Maybe the two of you are actually going to do that next step in the journey together. And that's where it gets a little bit tricky. And look, your friends are going to want to judge you like you're going back to that person again. Don't worry about that. It has nothing to do with your friends. Your friends are there for you. And yes, they've heard the stories multiple times, but it's so important that you feel into you and you understand what you're doing consciously and mindfully if you choose to go back into this relationship. Sometimes what happens is, we go back in because we have those fond memories of each other and we want to hold on to that. We want to hold on to the connection. We want to hold on to the intimacy. And those are a little bit slippery because it is easy sometimes to just fall back in to the sexual intimacy, the comfort intimacy. And while that's not always a terrible thing, it's just not always a very productive thing. So if you're just going back for that, I would encourage you to really go back to your inner journey and feel into your connection to yourself, your deep love for yourself, and your connection to source. Otherwise, you feel empty at the end of a reconnection, a rekindling that's not grounded in foundational elements of the lessons that you've set forth with this person in your soul contract. If the contract is over and you know that, and there is nothing more to learn, then going back for the intimacy, sexually or comfort wise, is not going to help you catapult forward. It's going to help you probably marinate, if not take a couple of steps back. So only you know the answer to that question, but I would not worry about what other people think. I would really just spend the time with yourself and feel into, how do I feel about this? What is it that I still feel like I need to get from a lesson perspective with this person? So hopefully that's helpful. And if someone else is out there struggling with this same thing, by all means, ask more clarifying questions. I'm happy to dig deeper into this topic. It's one of my favorites. All right, I'm checking the chat here just to make sure I'm not missing anyone that's on the live chat. All right, the next question. I tried a small dose of magic mushrooms, maybe 2 grams, and I had a bad experience. Every time I opened my eyes, I saw distortion with green and red colors. I couldn't keep my eyes open and felt disoriented. I'm not sure I want to try it again. Do you think I should? Well, my first take on this, not knowing the extra details, is that spirit, the mushrooms were trying to tell you to go inward and not open your eyes. Because if you open your eyes and you felt a level of distortion and you felt that was causing you some angst and anxiety because you weren't in control, I would say that is actually the lesson right there, is to be able to close your eyes and to be able to go inward and to be able to take the mind off the table. The mind is going to stay online. You've got to ask it to get in the back seat. The beauty about psychedelics in a more general sense, not always, is that it can do that switch, and it can really get the mind in the backseat, because it's really reducing the default mode network's ability to share those ongoing circuitous loops and narratives that go on because of the programs that your mind is running based on what you learned in childhood, based on your life experiences. They're all hidden. Most of them are hidden programs. You don't even know that you're running a program. It's like how a fish doesn't know that it's in water because it's just surrounded by water. It doesn't know any different until, of course, it's taken out of the water. Then it gets an awakening, right? So that's what this is about. It's about awakening, and we have to go inward to see what we're swimming in and to release those programs and to release some of these things. So I don't think that there is such a thing as a bad trip. And I recognize that there's uncomfortable trips and there's challenging trips. I'm just saying that there's no bad trip because I think that there's a lesson in every trip. And the darkest ones are the most challenging, but sometimes the most relieving, because they're bringing up a shadow side of yourself, a shadow side of the collective, the social constructs that are out there, and we want to blow those up. So if you're brave enough for your subconscious mind to come forward with something that feels spooky, scary, uncomfortable, welcome it. Welcome it, move through it, ask for it to dissolve. You don't have to play into all the storylines of whatever it is that you're showing, but definitely welcome it. So absolutely, I would say you should consider trying again, but only when you feel like you're ready to do this, because that's the most important part, is that you're in the right mindset, right? So it's set, setting, and server. You want to be in a safe set, like who's there, who's holding the space. And that would be another thing I would say is, what were your intentions going into the medicine? Did you set clear intentions? I would say the other thing is did you clear the space from other energies? Did you have someone holding the space for you? I'm a big believer in not journeying alone. It doesn't mean that the other person is on the medicine with you. It actually means that they're not on the medicine and they're holding the space. Did you clear the space with sage or something that helped you? So those are things that I would consider. And in fact, I have a psychedelic resource guide on bethbell.me, and you'll find some incredible tips in this guide that will help you if you're considering to do a journey for the first time, or maybe you've journeyed before, but you just aren't sure if you're doing all of the things that help you have a really safe journey. All right. I am going to go on to one other question. So I've got here on the live chat. Oh, thank you. Wow, you are amazing. I want to ask so many questions, but all the questions are somehow all irrelevant to me, and love your answers. Oh, you're great. Thank you. Thank you for the comment. I appreciate that. Please feel free to keep asking questions in the live chat. I am super happy to ask them. Sometimes we need to hear the answers in a couple different ways. So please, by all means, continue to ask questions. All right. So the next question, in psychedelic ceremonies, do you think it's okay that other people do healings on me? How do I know if it's legit when I'm on the medicine? Well, that kind of dovetails off of the previous question, in that set, setting, and server are so important going in. Setting your intentions are really important going in. And one of the intentions can be very overarching about connecting to source and to be guided by your higher self. Bring me in this ceremony only information, experiences that come from my higher self, that come from source, that come from a place of me expanding my consciousness, of me understanding more about who I am, what my purpose is. Those kinds of intentions set the stage for you to go to the highest places, and maybe at some points lower places, but you're at a place where you're tapping into the lesson that you've called in for your growth. So important that you set those intentions, that you understand if you're going to a ceremony with others, that you have a setting and server that you feel safe with. I like to also understand the server's intention going into a ceremony. It also gives me a little bit of guidance as far as if you're doing a group or if it's an individual. If it is a group, then I would just have some discernment around what the other people are coming in for. And oftentimes finding out from the server or the shaman what their intention is gives you an indicator of whether or not the group is really your vibe, that if they're really where you are, and what it is that you're looking to get from the medicine coming out. So the healing aspect of it, I think that there's a lot of different ways that this could be answered. So I'm hesitating slightly because I feel like I won't do it all justice in this one answer. But healing is something that has a lot of arms and legs to it. You are already perfect and whole. A Course in Miracles will tell you that. Your relationship is with Source. With that said, our brothers and sisters are here to help us. So yes, there are times when we can receive healing from others, but it's always a remembrance. It's a reminder for us to go back to our perfection and our wholeness. So, in ceremony, if you feel very safe and comfortable with the group because you know the individuals or you know the person that has set up the group, all of those factor in to where your comfort level may be in receiving a healing from others. There are so many amazing things that can happen with physical beings in the ceremony with you to help you release. Because when two or more are joined, miracles happen. We release things, we let go, we unravel our minds. There's also spirits, entities on the other side that come and they approach you and they want to heal you and they want to do things for you. And again, it's really going back to that intention and lining up with source, knowing that you're perfect and whole, and connecting to that and staying connected to that. Because every psychedelic session ceremony that I've done, my overarching goal is to embody the wisdom of oneness and divinity. So whatever the lessons are that I'm getting on that journey, I still want to bring back wholeness and oneness with my relationship with source. And that's all there is that relationship with source and our ability to love ourselves, our ability to unravel our minds, our ability to be present. When we are healed and whole and we know that, that's when we emanate that energy out onto the planet. No one else is here to heal you, but your brothers and sisters oftentimes can be incredible conduits to help you as you walk along the journey. We're all walking each other home. So with that said, oh my goodness, I think that's I'm going to end on that today. I don't see any more live questions in the chat, so feel free, please, to add any questions, even on replay. I'll answer them next week, every Sunday, 11:11 Pacific time. I'm here in California, so please join me. I would love to see you. I would love to hear from you. Feel free to submit your questions in advance. You can go to my Facebook page. You can do it on private message. If you have my text, you can certainly text me directly. And I so look forward to hearing from you next week. So in the meantime, hit subscribe, ring the bell. You'll know when the next live session comes on. And I wish you all a blissful week. And I appreciate you all so very much. Namaste.